Yeah, welcome back. We're still talking the housing sector for 2015. I'm now been joined in the studio by the past president of the Nigeria Institute of Building, Mr. Chukso Mayfi. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm sure you heard the last, same to you. You heard the last speaker, my last guest, Mr. Nya Etok Ezekiel, talking about how the industry fared for 2015 as we round off the year. But I want to ask you in relation to employment opportunities in the housing industry, what is your take on how we're able to get or create employment opportunities for the jobless amongst us?
I think all over the world, housing has been a very credible platform for employment generation. The construction industry itself is a great employer of labor. And I personally think that this government must work on that to be able to meet the promises they have made to the people on employment. The housing sector, let me give you a classical example. A unit of a house will employ over 100 people to deliver it.
Yes, regardless of the size of a house?
I'm just looking at a basic, maybe a 3-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
The different developers that will work on that particular building, it's about 100 of them that will work to finish that project. So if you look at that in terms of numbers, you understand that if you are doing 1,000 units, 2,000 units, so many people will be involved at different levels. So many skills, so many arts that will be involved. So housing on its own, for me, can be a platform to trigger out this economy into a positive change.
Okay, so were we able to do much in that regard in terms of employment generation?
Yeah, maybe for this year.
Yes, for 2015.
Yeah, what you understand was that the political situation in the country took a large chunk of this year. So as at the beginning of the year, when politics started, a lot of things were down. I mean, apart from the private investors, in the government angle, there were not a lot done in terms of housing or any type of housing because politics took over the whole system,
I know that we have a number of construction companies operating in the country, and you have a background in building construction. How were you able to, how did we fare in terms of provision of raw materials for construction? Because I know that we had expansions, we have government, for instance, in Lagos, we're seeing estates coming up, we're seeing some lands being filled, or some water-logged land being filled, and we see that a lot of projects were being undertaken in Lagos. But how would you rate the provision of these raw materials to fill and to execute the projects?
Yes, like I've said earlier, the housing sector is ever going forward. I mean, whether you like it or not, houses must be built. And as long as people are living, development is going to take place. So give or take, whether the economy is down or not, the housing sector will continue to grow because the material that you need for this industry, they are multifaceted from different sectors too. For instance, take cement, for instance. Even when we are talking that the economy is down in the housing sector, cement is still being produced in a way that when you have the tonnage, it's amazing. Where are these things consumed? That's why I say housing on its own is a big platform for national development, whether we want it or not. We must start focusing on that area to regenerate this country in terms of employment, capacity building, skill development, and all that.
So what were the challenges for this industry this year?
One of the major challenges in the industry is basically funding. And when an economy is unstable, the first area that will be affected is the area of construction. Investors are scared to bring in their money because of instability in the economy. And it affects a lot of projects that would have started in this 2015 couldn't take off because of the instability in policy and change of government. If the two things were tidied up on time, I'm sure a lot of people who are interested in coming to Nigeria for investment in housing would still have come. A lot of people, I can tell you today, a lot of people are still in the wings, waiting to enter housing, bringing in funds into housing as we speak now, So the challenge basically was because of the political situation of the country. And I'm sure in the first quarter of next year, when things are maybe stable, I'm sure a lot of activity will start coming up in housing.
So how much of private sector participation did we have in this industry for this year? Because if the government was majorly more concerned about, according to you, politics, we had a change of government, but we're seeing private sectors participation, involvement in the industry. How much of it did we see for 2015?
A lot of activities actually in the housing sector in 2015 was driven by the private sector. A lot of projects that are under PPP, BOT, and things like that. Those are the major ones that you can see taking all over the place. In terms of government, like I say, nothing has really happened in government. But private sector, investors are still coming in, developing housing estates, infrastructure based on PPP and things like that. Whether you like it or not, like I say, housing and construction are the basic ingredients for national development in any country.
So what would you want Mr. Babatunde Fashola to do? Because he's combining not just the Ministry of Housing.
Yes.
He has works to think about. He has power to think about.
Yes.
What do you expect him to do as we wrap up this year and, of course, going into 2016?
I think the first thing I plead him to do is to muzzle up a political will. Because in everything we do in this country, even in housing, I keep wondering, why are we having so much challenge in housing? I mean, we have gone out of this country to a place like Singapore, and we have seen how these things are done. In terms of capacity, knowledge, expertise, they are not better than us. So what is the problem? That's the question I keep asking. So for me, I think we need a good political will to drive this sector and a deep professional background. Because whether I like it or not, professionals must really be involved to deliver quality houses in this country. And so I say, for me, for the minister, I want to combine engagement of professionals and application of political will to drive the sector. Once the two things come together, I'm sure it can achieve.
My last speaker was talking about social housing. What do you make of it?
Yeah, social housing actually was one of the considerations that was in the last national housing policy by the last administration. Yeah, it's a good idea, but for me, I think it's still utopia in the sense that we are not really providing houses for people who can even afford it.
So how can the government provide houses that middle income, low income Nigerians can afford? Because if you look at some of the prices for some of the homes being constructed, they're way beyond the means of many people in the country. So what do you think can be done in that respect?
I think government has to be very, very realistic. We must go back to the basics. How did they arrive at this cost of these homes? That is the first thing we need to do. Break it down to elementals. And let's know how much it will cost actually to produce these homes. Because some of these figures you see are basically figures that are not, can be disputed when you put one and one together in terms of preparing the details. So for me, I think government must go back and make it look as if this is Nigerians' benefit from the government. Housing should not be something that should be done like a business. Okay. I mean, you can't be selling a house for 12 million naira for 3 months. How many people can afford 12 million naira? So for me, if you give me an average, a range of between 3 million and 5 million, that makes some sense. And I'm sure houses can be delivered with that price.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if really serious.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Chuks Omeife, the past president of the National Institute of Building. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
It's a pleasure.
And on this note, we call it a day on Business Morning.